what's funny today is right now, as the show is broadcasting live on Spaces, Hedera is having their like community developer call. So interesting timing. I imagine quite a few people from the community are going to be in that Discord developer call right now. But luckily this show is, 47 hours long. So after the call, we'll probably have some folks stop by. I'm hoping to have, I'm hoping to have some folks to stop by, but yeah, it's, one thing I've noticed in the ecosystem just before we get started here is, there are like so many conversations happening right now. It's really common to be on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it and see like literally multiple conversations, like either whether it's live spaces or live streams or whatever it might be happening at the same time. I can go back like a year or go back 2 years. And you were always kind of, looking for, where's the conversations happening? What's going on? Now it's like, it's crazy. There's literally, I would say close to 10, including mine. I would say close to 10, like really good Hedera focused shows out there. Like that's crazy. That's what we need. And it's been an absolute pleasure doing this live for the years that I've been able to do it. So welcome everybody. We're going to get things kicked off. It's another week in Hedera, HBAR, Hashgraph, HBARbarians. You know what's up.
And we're live. You're listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show.
Hosted by Brandon Davenport, aka itsbrandond.
Okay, it's episode 111. How crazy is that? The last day of January. Feels like so many things are like turning over and switching over. It's pretty crazy. Insert more coins. For folks watching the video version, I'm dancing to the song. But yeah, I always come up with kind of a goofy title for the shows. Insert coins to continue. Kind of what it feels like right now. It's like we're leveling up, but we want this madhouse game to continue, and we need liquidity. We need more coins. It is, as I said, it's January 31st, 2024. I've already about 6 times put 2023 accidentally on official documents and contracts. I've been signing contracts recently. I'll share more later. But yeah, episode 111. I was even typing that out and I was like, how crazy is it? How crazy is that? So yeah, we got a lot to talk about this week. I'm not going to do an overview of the stories. I mean, we're just really going to get into it. And make sure to head over to hashgraph.news for everything you need to know about the show. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on everywhere. And like I said, we're doing a video version now, so there's going to be more clips, and I think people are really enjoying those. That's been great to see gain traction. So off the top, I asked a question to the Hedera HBAR community recently. And basically the question was like, clearly we need more liquidity in the Hedera ecosystem. That's been something I've been hearing over and over and over again, from so many different people. When the topic comes up about like, how do we grow, how do we grow the community? How do we grow, the ecosystem effectively? And a huge part of that, arguably the most important part of that, again, from what I've been hearing, is liquidity. That means bringing money into the Hedera ecosystem. And that's not generally as easy as it sounds for any network that's kind of in its earlier phases. Remember, the Hedera network is still in beta. And so when you think about the ways to get, liquidity, right, money from people's bank accounts into the crypto world, and then figure out a way to get that into the Hedera world, you're talking about bridges and all sorts of different things, which when we talk about, the barriers to entry for cryptocurrency, we talk about it all the time. It can be difficult for a normal person to, for a non-technical person, talking about the crypto community like we're a bunch of freaks, which we are. By the way, we got a bunch of freaks listening live on Spaces now. Shout out to you guys. Take a minute, give the Spaces a share. Like I said, the Hedera is doing their Discord call, so I think there's quite a few people in there. I actually think I might tune in and listen to it. I know that Patches is going to talk about HCS 20 on that call today, which will be interesting. I want to see if I can let's run a little experiment here. I got to log into Discord. Whatever. But yeah, so liquidity. We talk about it, and there's so many barriers to entry, seed phrases, figuring out wallets, non-technical people. We talk about this all the time. And there's so many cool things happening. Like we've got Galaxy that's really easy to use. We've got Hashpacks that's easy to use. We've got Kabila. We got all sorts of other wallets in the ecosystem. And so it's getting easier and easier, but we still talk about seed phrases. We still talk about all those different types of things. But how do you get the money into the ecosystem, right? There's various ways. People will buy HBAR in exchanges. People will own assets on other networks and bridge them over. But there's all those different user experience challenges and technical challenges. And that aside, there's also marketing challenges, branding challenges, awareness challenges. One key point of awareness that is brought up many, many times is listings on exchanges. So we're going to talk about that. And I think that, when we look at the week, there's a lot of stories, I think sometimes that can fly under the radar in the Hedera ecosystem, because coming out of the end of the year and coming into this year, there's been so many heavy hitting headlines. This week, I think some folks may look at it as a little bit of a quieter week, but sometimes, I look at stuff like this and I go, hey, here's an opportunity to really kind of take a minute and look a little closer at some stuff that might be overlooked. And there's some really, really, really interesting developments. And I mean things where you dig around in replies on X or all those different types of things. I'm not talking about, press releases or blog articles or videos. So let's dive into a couple things before we get on the liquidity talks, just because there's a couple things to get out of the way here. The first one is a reminder for developers. The testnet is resetting tomorrow. So that basically means all the testnet wallets, all your testnet dApps, everything like that, out the window. You'll want to turn over some, smart contracts or whatever you want to do, create new accounts, everything like that. So just a reminder to developers. That's a relatively new thing on the network, but helps, clear out the junk. It's effectively like the testnet, emptying the recycle bin. Now let's chat a little bit about, let me see here. Well, I want to share a pretty cool update that happened recently, which was actually not recently, but yesterday. WalletConnect officially kind of went live in the Hedera ecosystem. And I know this has been a big story. I've been involved with this initiative. It's really been incredible to work with all the wallets in the ecosystem and the WalletConnect team and everybody. It's been like a organic community initiative, and it's made it over the finish line. So put simply, it's available on NPM as a package, which means that it's really easy for developers now to just reach out and start using it. So, big development. WalletConnect is available for developers on Hedera, which is super exciting. And, what that kind of means is your favorite dApp works with your favorite wallet. That's the vision, right? Is you can connect any dApp to any wallet, regardless of how those integrations are kind of put into place. So that's going to be really exciting for dApps. It's going to make their job a lot easier. It's going to allow them to focus on, making fun stuff more so versus just underlying infrastructure. That's all taken care of. And it makes it better for wallets because they're going to be able to focus on more features built on top of their platform instead of, worrying about interoperable integrations. Effectively now, if you create a wallet, the vision again, if you create a wallet in Hedera and it's a new wallet and you integrate with this WalletConnect library, effectively you can work with any dApp out of the box, vice versa. So really exciting update. I like huge shout out to wallets. I also think just in general, it's like, great for the community to see competitors come together to work on something. That's something great to see happen in any industry. It shows on one hand maturity, but it also shows that it's still early. So that's been really, really great to be a part of. Behind the scenes, super good stuff. Now, one thing that I can't even imagine what it's been like to be behind the scenes for, that's not amazing, but I mean, could be in a certain way is FTX has just announced that they expect to repay crypto customers in full. So people that need a quick refresh, FTX, the second biggest at the time crypto exchange next to Binance, which is also having its own issues. There's a bit of a theme here. Basically, they filed for bankruptcy. SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO, went to jail, and all this. The story is what it is. But basically, as a company in bankruptcy, people step in. They try to figure out what's going on. They try to recover the funds. So it seems like they recovered some funds. We've been talking about this story. Looks like customers may be paid back, which is great. That's going to be an interesting story to continue to watch kind of unfold. The other thing too that happened this morning that was kind of crazy, that we're still kind of watching unfold right now, is Ripple's co-founder Chris Larsen was hacked. So there was this news story that came out today, about a couple hours ago, and it was tweeted out by Zach XBT. It says, it appears Ripple was hacked for 213 million XRP, which is about 112 million US dollars. The stolen funds have been laundered through MEXC, Gate, Binance, Kraken, right? So a bunch of exchanges. And people were kind of like, well, Ripple hacked. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that entail if, Ripple's hacked? And so co-founder of Ripple, Chris Larsen, who is executive chairman, tweeted out, yesterday there was unauthorized access to a few of my personal accounts, not Ripple. We were quickly able to catch the problem and notify exchanges and freeze affected addresses. Law enforcement is already involved. Is this another case of, C-suite people just not doing proper security? You know what I mean? It's like two-factor authentication. Is this a situation where someone just guessed his password and logged into his email? Who knows? But unfortunate. Also unfortunate was it appears the managing director for South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa just quit, which is kind of crazy. Ripple. I don't quite know what's going on over there. Definitely seems like some stuff is going on. I hope everything is okay. I think it's worth just giving a quick mention that it is not good to see negative things happen to other layer ones. It's just not a good thing. Not a good thing for the industry. So hoping stuff gets worked out. But yeah, that is crazy. Something else that's crazy in a good way is that Hedera is set to pass 40 billion transactions, which is really crazy. We're averaging about 1.3 thousand transactions per second. So we're, back up to number one on the charts for transactions, ahead of Solana and Cardano and those other networks that, and it's interesting because the topic of transactions on Hedera is, can be contentious just because, the majority of those transactions are from Avery Dennison's @my.io platform. And that platform is subsidized by the foundation. There's a lot of, conversations around that. And we've talked about it extensively on the show. I'm not super concerned about it, but we do see, if we look at Metrica here, we do see that, from time to time, let's look over the year. There are these like crazy drop-offs in transactions, right? They drop off from, we could be at, 1,000 or 2,000 TPS and it'll drop down to, 50 transactions or nothing. And I think that can concern some people. I think it's largely tied to the business cycle of @my.io, Avery Dennison. But that's been really interesting to kind of see unfold. And it's been really interesting to watch the conversations take place just around transactions. TPS has been such a huge part of Hedera and the identity of the network, the identity of the community. So we're almost at 40 billion. And I think that, there's definitely a little bit of, not concern, but just, attention put towards the fact that wrapping up 2023, we were hitting an average of almost, 3,000 transactions per second. Right now, we're kind of rocking at an average of, 1.3K per second. So average is down. We don't quite know what's happening. We've talked about how confident the Hedera and Swirlds and Foundation team are. And I think that bolsters a lot of confidence. We also know that many of the governing council members have use cases coming. They're years into their development or their R&D cycles. So we can start to expect to see some things coming this year. But yeah, it's definitely, I think that right now the attitude of the Hedera community is a little on the edge of the seat in so many different ways, good ways, bad ways. There's this additional attention. Everything's kind of heightened a little bit. We don't quite know what's going to happen. And some exciting things happen when we least expect it. That's been really, really interesting to watch unfold. We had a big episode last week on meme coins. I actually had the creator of Grelf, Warlock Enki, on the show. We chatted about meme coins and stuff. Very interesting conversation, but that's all part of it. It's all kind of meshing together. The degen culture, enterprise, and builders, developers, even just people that hold HBAR and don't use the network, are in this, soon to be bull market. Are all those different crowds are kind of being crammed together, forced together. That's what's kind of happening right now. And it's like the different cliques at high school go to the lunchroom, and it's like, you get all these like infighting and all these different things. It's going to be very interesting to see how the culture of the community changes. Like I've said before, we're not going to get any more like OG HBARbarians. And what I say is like people that, not that it matters like too much, but people that were around for like GoMint or Exact Wallet or before NFTs existed, or we can use any kind of like marker to delineate, what that is. But people that experience those times, they're going to continue dwindling in number. And I think that, a lot of those people, do hold steadfast to the original values, the kind of like all substance, no hype type thing of Hedera. It's an enterprise coin. And like I talked about on the show last week, is like, Hedera as a network, Hedera as a culture has changed so much, right? I mean, when I invested in Hedera, there were no NFTs, there were no coins. The algorithm was patented. It was not open source. There was no Swirlds Labs. It was just a different place. It was a different vision. It was a different time. And literally just part of, being in the technology industry. You have to change, you have to adapt, you have to throw things away, you have to take risks. And it's personally for me, it's been fantastic to see, even though imperfect, Hedera embrace the retail degen meme culture. When I say Hedera, what I mean, not literally Hedera, I mean kind of like the diaspora of those organizations. Like we got the foundation, we got the association, we've got the DLT Science Foundation, we've got Swirlds Lab. So there's just, it's just changing, right? And people are learning new things. People are trying new things. People are taking risks. And generally I find those to be the people that use the network. And I think there is a large number of people feeling large. I don't think it's a huge group of people, but it's people that hold HBAR and don't really use the network that I think kind of can fall a bit behind in regards to just the community or get a little bit out of touch with things. I think that if you are taking your HBAR investment seriously and you're depending on it for building wealth, just being an investor myself in HBAR, it's a no-brainer to use the network yourself and try out different things like DEXs and meme coins and NFTs and stuff. Try them out from even just from a research perspective, because you're going to be depending on people doing those things for an initial booster to the bull market. So I would encourage anybody that's on the sidelines a little bit. I mean, dive in, check it out. It's one thing to talk about how great Hedera is and believe in the vision, but it's also another thing to actually participate in it, not just hold HBAR. So because the other side to it too is the people that use the network are going to shape it, right? The people who hold HBAR and don't use the network are not going to really influence the network that much. They're not really going to shape it the way they want it to be molded. The people who are at the driver's seat, the people who are shaping the network and driving the direction more and more are, is the community, the builder community, the developer community. And it's really important to be a part of that and understand it. If your attitude is wanting to see Hedera do specific things, if your investment thesis is literally like, I don't think Hedera can do any wrong, I think it's going to be dynamite, I'm holding HBAR, I don't know what it's going to look like, I just have a really good feeling, I have a high conviction, the technology's good, the direction's good, well, there you go. But if you're just holding HBAR on the sidelines, you're not really doing anything, but you have a lot of opinions about the network, check it out, try using it. Your opinions might change, you might learn some stuff. So that's what I would say on that. But yeah, I think that 40 billion transactions, pretty big milestone. But it's funny, the excitement starts to wear off a bit. It's really strange. Like it is like literally world record setting stuff happening here. And the Hedera community is like focused on other stuff. It's pretty crazy. It kind of shows how mature this network is getting, which is really incredible. Now, another thing is talking about growth, talking about meme coins, talking about retail. I know this is something we're talking about a lot on the show. I know a lot of my listeners, are kind of not fully plugged into this stuff. Not to say they're not for it. It's just kind of new. Like we really have to remember that I'll give you a great example. If you were to go back in time to 2020 or 2021, if you were to ask an HBARbarian, how did they learn about Hedera? And this is true. Like most of those people will be like, oh, I heard it through Mike Maloney. And like, who is Mike Maloney? Well, Mike Maloney is this like awesome old guy on YouTube that does precious metal stuff, which is like literally the antithesis of crypto, right? I mean, you've got this guy who is, again, like this precious metals guy, like not even stocks, not even any of that stuff. and he's talking about crypto, and he's talking about Hedera, and he's talking about this new network. And that's how I found out about Hedera. And Mike Maloney's a great example of kind of what we gotta do in this community, in this industry, is like, there it is right there. A precious metals guy who is learning new things and changing his approach and adapting with the times, even at his older age. So I still say we can take a page from Mike Maloney's book. And, I think that that's kind of, you go back in time, that's kind of the genesis of the community, like literally a YouTube video. But, Mike Maloney's still holding HBAR and he's rocking and rolling. So it's good stuff. Kind of random, but it is what it is. Now, growth, saucer swap. What we see here is there's an analytics post that was shared by everybody basically in the Hedera community, saucer swap and the foundation, and then community members and everything. It's great. Saucer swap has seen 68% month over month growth, 69%. Nice. Month over month growth. And this is interesting for a few reasons. So that's a really amazing number. That's awesome. Pancake Swap ranks number 1 in users at 1.1 million users. So those are people that are active within 30 days. Kind of a pretty standard KPI for web apps or platforms or whatever. And Saucer Swap has 11,720. So when we talk about 68% growth, we're talking about hundreds of people, or thousands of people. So it really shows like how small the Hedera community is. But I think that it also kind of shows that potential, because we are seeing huge growth. Like Saucer Swap is, we've got like tens of millions of dollars of TVL. We've got millions of transactions on one DEX, and we have multiple DEXs now, right? Like we have H Suite as well. That's a completely different approach, smart contractsless. And I think that you look at these numbers and you look at these types of things, and my brain kind of is two ways about it. I go, well, 68% growth on 11,000 people, it's not that impressive. It's not that actually that big. And then the other part of my brain is like, that's something to celebrate. That's part of this attitude again of, in Hedera, we'll have these wins, right? Or we'll have people that get excited about something. And there's just a vibe here sometimes, especially on the Hedera subreddit, where it's just like, kill the vibe, right? I mean, it's tough to balance that. Like, I'm all for being realistic. I'm all for really being brass tacks. I'm in it for the technology, all that. But also at the same time, it's like, why kind of kill the energy? Like if someone's like, I think HBAR is going to go to $1. It's unfortunate sometimes to see literally people holding HBAR, spending so much time explaining why HBAR is not going to hit $1. So again, I think it's just like a bit of a change thing. So I see some responses to this, and literally from the Hedera community, that'll be like, well, 69% on 11,000 people is not that much, not that impressive. And it's like, sure. But at the same time, it's like people are excited about it. And it actually is something worth celebrating, like it's something, and we did not have a DEX a year ago. Now we have a DEX. And we have 69% growth. So I think it's fantastic. I dig it. Shout out to Saucer Swap. Shout out to people in the community. Celebrate those wins, however small they might be. Celebrate those wins. That's what draws people to a network. That's what gets people excited, because when they have those first small wins, they want to be in a community that celebrates it. Again, talking about tokens. I'm going to talk about a token. This one's for the Hedera fundamentalists out there. There's rumor of a new token launching that is not a meme token. I repeat, there is a rumor of a token launching that is not a meme token. This one's for you. Neuron World posted in replies, deep in. Also, too, shout out. They had a TV spot. I don't think they were featured in it, but
is running test flights out of the town.
It's about drones.
The drones would be used to deliver the likes of emergency medicine, food, or maintenance supplies.
It's this news story, and basically, this was about how Neuron is being used to make sure drones don't crash into each other in the sky. But deep down in those comments, way down here, talking about a token, it feels too, like real quick, it feels too in the Hedera space. I get asked this as well. These different projects that launch, is there going to be a token? I get asked, like, is there going to be a token for this? So, there may in fact be a token for Neuron, right? The drone use case everyone is very excited about. I had a chance to spend some time with those guys in LA last year and had great conversations with them. They're pivoting from just drones to aviation and delivery and all sorts of things. Very exciting stuff happening with them. But they put out a tweet and they say, token launch is planned for Q3. So watch this space. There will be opportunities to get involved before that, though. So it looks like Neuron's going to have a token. And that's really, really exciting. And we think about, what does it mean for a platform to have a token? Like, what is that all about? And, we talked about a few episodes ago, WiseKey and their Wise Art platform that's going to be this kind of, physical, digital, fractionalized NFT collection marketplace from like a massive company, WiseKey, and their marketplace, Wise Art. And they're going to be doing tokens and stuff like that. But interestingly, with that company is the tokens will actually represent stock ownership in the company that owns the marketplace, which is really fascinating. So I think that, like we talked about with meme coins and stuff, and a quick call out too, there was a HBAR Foundation Spaces that took place yesterday. And basically it was Brandon, the HBAR bull. He was hosting a Foundation Spaces, and you just kind of take a shot. And he basically just set up a spaces with a bunch of meme coins on Hedera to have a conversation about it. And, I just think that this kind of stuff's just going to be a little messy, like I'm talking about, these different cliques coming together. And I think it was just good to see, the Foundation embrace that kind of stuff. It's worth remembering that, the Foundation is an independent organization. It's not beholden to the same rules and restrictions that Hedera is. And, I think that it's going to be good to see that kind of stuff happen. I don't think it's as graceful as it could be. I don't think that it's like completely on the nose right away, but it's a start. It's something. And it was a good conversation. And I encourage people to check it out. I think it was an important one, and it's kind of crazy. I mean, who would have thought if we were to go back in time, who would have thought? I keep saying this on the show so much. I actually realized this last episode that I keep talking about going back in time, but it is really a period of reflection, I think, in the community. But if I were to go back and say to myself, my past self, like the HBAR Foundation is going to have a spaces with like 12 different kind of like degen random meme coins, I'd be like, you're nuts. That sounds crazy. But it happened. It's crazy times, for better or for worse. It's change. You got to stay with the times. Time marches on. This is decentralization. People are just literally going to do whatever they want to do. Now, another quick thing, I want to get through a few other things just before we get to kind of the main story, talking about liquidity. The other thing that was interesting to keep in mind, just a quick reminder for people, is we haven't had Hedera meeting minutes recently, which is strange. I don't think we've ever experienced a gap this big. But if you go to, a quick refresher, Hedera, the governing council, publishes meeting minutes every month that summarize the conversations and decisions made by the governing council and the different committees. And it's really great. It's verified on a platform called ProvenDB. And I think it's a good process. It's more transparent than most organizations. And I think that reading the meeting minutes is, it's as close as we'll get to those meetings. I go on the website, and the most recent one is October 18th, 2023. And usually these meeting minutes will be published a month or two after. But this is really weird, to be honest. And I wouldn't say concerning, but worth noting, because what is that about? We've got November, December, and now January coming up. We're getting on the threshold of going a pretty long time before meeting minutes. And November and December are going to be very interesting ones to read, because that was the ramp up to Hitachi joining the governing council, right? And that was the ramp up to Davos. That was those are going to be really interesting to unpack. We'll unpack them on the show when they're available. But just a quick shout out, looking forward to seeing those meeting minutes. Australian Payments Plus. This is an interesting story. So, and I'm just going to crack a new bevy here. Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. Also, too, a quick mention before we dive into this. We're talking about this upcoming story I'm going to talk about is about a new governing council member that we got that nobody realized. Nobody saw it happen. I want to quickly just give a shout out to all the supporters of the show. I literally couldn't do it without you guys. I mean, one of the big things about this show is it keeps changing. It keeps growing. I started the show on Clubhouse, right? These days, people are like, what is Clubhouse? Moved to Twitter Spaces. Then the show was made available on major podcast platforms. Now there's, a video version. And soon the show is going to, have live video streams and stuff like this. Show's growing. And all this equipment that I have was purchased through people leaving tips for the show, just sending HBAR. And we're in it, third year of the show. And this is, long form, independent, community supported news and interviews in the Hedera ecosystem. And it's just one of my favorite things to do every week. It's become kind of like my internal clock over the years. I no longer measure time in weeks, months, and years. I measure time in Hashgraph enthusiasts episodes. So if you want to support the show, please check out the post pinned to the top of the spaces, or just the show notes on podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, it's literally right on your screen. Throw an HBAR tip. It's just send it to an address. I appreciate fun memos. And yeah, just really appreciate everyone supporting the show, and not having to do like sponsors and ads and everything like that. Really, really appreciate it. All the info about the show is available at hashgraph.news. So another governing council member joined. So basically, last week or the week before, I can't recall. When was Hitachi added? Hitachi was added at Davos. So that must have been episode 109. So that was the previous week. But anyways, we got a new council member, Hitachi. Everyone was stoked about it. They're a very interesting company. We talked about it in depth. So go listen to that episode. But people were like, there were definitely rumors. Like I know Max Walker Williams was out at Davos and he was hinting at a possible second governing council member being added, and there are kind of rumors swirling and everything. And I don't know if people remember, but recently Rob Allen came back to the governing council. And, for those not familiar with Rob Allen, he had a very interesting trajectory in the ecosystem. And I've had him, on the show as a guest many times. Always love chatting with Rob, but he was just like an HBAR community member, a holder. He worked at FPOS, and basically FPOS ended up to be a governing council member. So Rob Allen was on the governing council. Then Rob Allen moved to the HBAR Foundation. Interesting move. Then he moved to the Hashgraph Association. And it appeared as though his roles were really about establishing foundations, building out programs, all sorts of different things. And recently he arrived back on the governing council. So what does that mean? He came back to FPOS, or what's going on? Well, there's actually a new entity, and this isn't like super new, but it's relevant here, called Australian Payments Plus. This is where Rob Allen is at now. And what Australian Payments Plus is, it was formed through a merger of 3 Australian payment companies: Bay Group, NPP Australia, and, drumroll please, FPOS. So what's relevant here? So the headline on the Hedera blog on January 24th this year is Australian Payments Plus is now a Hedera governing council member. So what does that mean? We got a new governing council member. So we're at 31 now? Not really. Basically what this is it's not the same process of a governing council member. People watching the video, I'm getting very animated. I'm doing like some kind of like kung fu with my hands. I don't know why. But what this is about is it's a very interesting thing to observe, which is a merger between various companies, and then that company spun out as like the parent company, automatically becoming a governing council member. Very, very fascinating. So just to put it into context, FPOS was a governing council member. They merged with 2 other companies. And then so that final conglomerate was grandfathered in as a governing council member. Very fascinating stuff. And it really makes you think about governing council dynamics and how they work. We're constantly learning about all sorts of different ways in which the governing council is shaped and moves and changes. And here's a little bit about Australian Payments Plus. What this means is that most digital payments in Australia would now utilize the Hedera network. And we've talked about, FPOS's use cases for Hedera, their QR code payments and everything. There is the Hedera ecosystem and network and technology is deeply entrenched in the Australian market. And Rob Allen is really championing that as the self-proclaimed payments guy. So this is really interesting to see unfold. It's super significant because what we can hypothesize here is a trend of Hedera maybe becoming the backbone for microtransactions worldwide. Think about it. The Australian Payments Plus is the backbone of most of the payment infrastructure in Australia. They're a governing council member. And this isn't a fresh governing council member, right? They're deeply entrenched already. They're already engaged with Hedera. They already have live use cases. And this is kind of just scaling something up. This is kind of just like more of something good. Australian Payments Plus processes billions of transactions annually. And there's a quick excerpt here, which was Australian Payments Plus has several initiatives underway to ride the wave of innovation with Hedera, unleashing the full potential of distributed ledger technology to transform our organization. So what are these several initiatives? I don't know. But again, I really throw some extra weight to this announcement because, again, this isn't like some kind of fresh green governing council member saying, hey, we're going to work on some use cases. This is a quote unquote new governing council member that's very compelling and very exciting. It's effectively already been on the council for years and already has use cases online. So this is really exciting. And just to put it into context, if Australian Payments Plus, if this was different and FPOS was never on the governing council and out of the blue, Hedera were to announce that Australian Payments Plus was on the governing council, that would be a very substantial announcement. So very excited for this. Very interesting to see what's going to be happening. And, Rob Allen fans out there, all you Sharky Robs, is a big W, big dub. Quick tweet here from Zepsi as well. That's, really what it's about. Australian Payments Plus as a governing council means the entire Australian payment system is now represented on Hedera. Very bullish. Seconded. Okay, so I want to dive into our main story today, which revolves around liquidity in the network. I want to ask the community listening live too. There's a little comment button at the bottom right of the spaces for people listening live. The question I asked the community is like, let me just actually pull it up and read what I asked. I'm trying to remember, but I literally have the link right here. So I asked, so it's clear to me that bringing in outside liquidity into the Hedera ecosystem is paramount importance. What things will accelerate this and what is holding us back? And I'm interested to hear thoughts from people listening live. I'll read those out too. But basically, lots of people left responses. I want to talk about them. This is less a story of me kind of like regurgitating news or whatever. And this is more about just elevating voices in the Hedera community on a really, 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 really important topic. And I think it's important to keep in mind that in general, Hedera is best for enterprises, but not only for enterprises. I think that's a point that's being brought up again and again, which is there's this kind of idea out there that's been out there for a little bit that Hedera by its nature is like only for enterprises, but that's really never been true. And even from the beginning, Lehman Baird saying, it's an enterprise grade network, but anyone can use it, right? Same as if you have something that's military grade, it doesn't mean that, people can't use it. Anyone can't use it. And I think the unique quality of Hedera is it's also, the most affordable, which is very interesting. But let's dive into it here. Let's dive into some of these responses because it's really interesting to me. So HBAR Joe, and for folks watching the video version, you'll be able to kind of see these responses and read them yourself. And the thread will be on hashgraph.news. But HBAR Joe says, couldn't a huge part of the problem be as simple as access? If more HTS tokens had listings on the bigger central exchanges, I believe people would give those products a good look. Most people are adverse to leaving their comfort zone. We need to put the products into their space. And that's a great point. That's a big one you'll see coming up is central exchange listings. And there's an argument to be made of a direct correlation between the price of an asset and the amount of trading pairs that are on exchanges, right? If you look at, any of the other kind of altcoins like Ethereum or Cardano or Solana or Algorand or whatever it might be, they just have more trading pairs and they just have a, higher price relatively to HBAR. So there's a strong argument to be made for, more trading pairs. Orbis 86 says more big validators. And I agree. And what I take away from that is community nodes. That's a huge thing that we're missing. And it's it's going to take a few steps to get there, if folks recall, it's like there are these different stages. There's going to be permissioned nodes, then there'll be community nodes, and then there'll be permissionless nodes, right? And then anonymous nodes. And so it's this, as Hedera puts it, pathway to decentralization. And so that's a big thing is community nodes. And it's important because it's important for two reasons. One is it's going to help the network scale. Wouldn't it be exciting to see to stake your HBAR to a node that isn't IBM or Google or Boeing or whatever, but is a Hedera community project, right? That'd be pretty exciting. But on the other side is a key criticism of Hedera has always been the fact that the only validators are nodes that operate the network and allow consensus to function are major organizations, and that turns off quite a few people. And so with the introduction of community nodes, we'll start to see a lot of those criticisms die down. It'll be the exact same as it happened with open source, right? If folks recall, Hedera was not always open source. Now it's open source. And that was a key criticism. Most notably, Charles Hoskins, founder of Cardano, he said, I won't read the white paper for Hashgraph because it's patented. It's not open source. I won't touch it. And, I think that was the opinion of quite a few people. And so there are similar opinions that Hedera isn't worth checking out because it doesn't have more validators. And you can make arguments on both sides. We can split hairs and talk about the merit of those arguments and, the pathway to decentralization and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is it would be great to have community nodes. So that's a great point from Orbis. Tommy, he says more central exchange listings, more central exchange and decentralized exchange trading pairs with HBAR, more bridges, and more multi-chain dexes. So that is really, really important. I don't think it can be emphasized enough. I think if I was forced to pick one thing, if I was at the helm of Hedera and I could only do one thing to grow the network, it would probably be accessibility, like trading pairs. But it's hard to know how that exactly plays out, what's needed to make that happen. Like we've heard many times, it can cost X million of dollars to get listed in Coinbase or whatever it might be. There's wheels that got to get greased. It's a crazy world out there. It's a silly place. But we need it. We need those listings. And I think that's a great call out. Again, Cosmic says, and Cosmic was listening earlier. Shout out to Cosmic. Hedera community member says, to attract new users, Hedera needs a degen moment, as its current stability lacks the volatility that draws people seeking financial opportunities in the crypto space. It's that simple. And that's true. When you look at, the Hedera charts, it can sometimes feel a little bit like a stable coin. Like if you really zoom out, like what's the first thing, right? What's the first thing people are going to do when they load up the HBAR charts and they're like, I want to get into this thing? What's the first thing they do? Well, they go to, all-time charts. What's the history of this asset? And the HBAR charts are crazy. We all we have the HBAR charts burned into our brains at this point. We close our eyes at night and we see it. And it's this big flat desert of, between 1 cent and 5 cents. And then shaboom, February 2021, we go from literally 3 cents to 40 cents, right? And then we go back down and then we go back up and we go back down. And it's very exciting. And it attracted a lot of attention, and volume would reach $1 billion in one day sometimes. It was crazy. And then we're back down. And, now since June 2022 until now, it's like we're really ranging, between 4 cents and 10 cents. It's not really that exciting. And that's a great point. We need that kind of wacky price action on HBAR. And so this is where the conversation surrounding meme coins and stuff like that gets very interesting, because the ecosystem does offer that in a limited capacity with the meme coin space, which is very exciting for people. And so you kind of look at this stuff, and you look at HBAR, you look at the price action of HBAR, and it's just not really that exciting right now. And it just depends on how you look at it. And again, there's two main ways to look at it, right? You can look at it as like a a knowledgeable deep value investor and go, well, clearly, HBAR is ranging and the fundamentals are on the up and up. And I read the Masari crypto report and the network is going up in different metrics and it's consolidating and it's building and there's a golden cross and the MACD is over, their RSI is oversold or whatever. So there's those people that do see the value and opportunity in this and that, but the majority of people just want to see big green candles and, throw money into it. So they're definitely, when someone says, Hedera's quote degen moment, we had one, right? And it was funny because we had one before we even had any tokens, NFTs or meme coins or anything on the network. Now we do. Let's see here. So Tatsuyaki says, we need to collaborate with other chains publicly in multiple forms, from integrations to spaces, and then we need to communicate value effectively. So that's a great point too. It goes back to what Lehman Baird was saying at Davos, which is the end of us will be tribalism. We look at the partnerships that Swirls Labs and the DREC Alliance is forming with Dalgarand and potentially Cardano and Ripple and those different types of things, and it's very exciting. And that's all part of it. Is you want to build bridges for liquidity and you also want to build bridges for people. There's two sides to it. It's like you got to bring the money in for sure, but you also have to bring the people. And those are two separate operations sometimes. I think that No Man's Internet, shout out, very regular listener to the show, says easy and affordable access to stables, including HUSDC. And this is a big point of conversation for the community is, stable coins, the fact that we have, USDC minted natively on Hedera and that it is underutilized and undercapitalized. And I think that that's also a huge topic and opportunity for the ecosystem. So I think that's really important. Lord Crypto Mang says, we need more builders, more DEXs, derivatives and lending protocols, etc. More places for people to degen and have fun in crypto. I still play on Phantom and AVAX over there. We're spoiled for choice. I think it's coming though. And they bring up a specific example of serial finance, which I'll talk about just a little bit later on the show. But that's also a great point is we need those bridges and we need that liquidity coming in, but also a big part of this is like, what do you do when you get here? What DeFi products do you have? People want lending, people want borrowing. We don't quite have those things yet. We need retail oracles. There's certain pieces that we need here. So that's also an angle to look at it from. Really, really great points. CryptoLogic says liquidity will come as adoption ramps up, as the market moves away from hype and into retail life use cases. More ways to make life-changing money, airdrops, ICOs, etc. As council members announced, and live, that brings hype. For example, Tesla or NVIDIA. I mean, that's the other side to this too, is this community member brings up a great point too, is, I think that the Hedera community collectively is like, well, what are you expecting? A governing council member announcement to pump the price? It's not going to happen, right? It is not going to happen. We get Hitachi, we get Dell Technologies, we get whatever. I think there was a bit of a pump on Google being added and stuff like that. But in general, people are like, But again, the examples that they bring up, right? Tesla, NVIDIA, we've heard Apple, we've heard Amazon, we've heard all sorts of different companies potentially being added to the governing council. And there is a case to be made for that. What if NVIDIA was added? What if, one of those very retail focused companies are added to the council? Remember, like companies like Hitachi and Kofra and IBM and stuff, these are not generally consumer facing companies. It's not something people generally will get like super excited about. It's stuff that, HBAR Barians will get excited about. But you think about a company, again, like Tesla or like something like that. And yeah, that would probably have a big impact and generate a lot of awareness. So I don't think we totally throw out the possibility of governing council member additions bringing attention to the network. But it would have to be a very particular one. So those are great points. Blockfisher says, here are a couple of things missing. There needs to be real world asset marketplace. I should be able to buy a vintage shirt or hat from someone in the community and pay USDC. We need a news site that takes microtransactions. Please, someone resurrect the daily timestamp. That's so funny. That's a really deep track for the Hedera community. There was this website back, feels like 40 years ago. There was a news website on Hedera where like you would do micropayments to read news stories and stuff like that. So that's another thing is lots of like innovative products, lots of things for people to do. That's what it's all about. People, like when people come over here and they get these assets, these NFTs, these tokens, HBAR, giving them stuff to do with it is important. The goal here is to shorten the amount of time between someone learning about Hedera and then having a positive experience on the network. That's what this is all about, is how quickly can that happen? GoTribal.hbar says a real world asset and crypto exchange built on Hedera. Buying that real world asset and pay a few play coins on Hedera wallet goes a long way. People only need to experience the low fees, security, and finality to understand that the hype is real. And again, that goes to my point of what I'm saying is like, you got to have those experiences, and seeing, real world assets being brought up. That's extremely interesting, because that gets even closer to people's real world lives. And just on the periphery of this, a use case that I keep bringing up on the show, probably too much, is coupons. I mean, the new coupon standard is very exciting. We talked about the recent news that the Toshiba, right, the number one point of sales hardware system, if you go to a store and you check out at the counter, that's probably happening on a Toshiba point of sale system. Toshiba has been, and I think already has integrated the new coupon standard, leveraging Hedera into their point of sale system. So there's going to be also a flood of those different types of use cases. And those are exciting because they kind of touch in that zone that Lehman will mention a lot, which is people will use the network without realizing it. And so that's also another angle to look at it from, is like improving people's lives, bringing value to the marketplace without people understanding or knowing that it's Hedera, is also very interesting, because it changes the way people think. You think about, one of your parents going out and, using a coupon and, saving some money on milk, and just, like, oh, this is so much better than it used to be. Or even people trying to transfer money between their banks or different things like that. And knowing that, like, hey, this is a network you can actually buy a little piece of. You can buy a little piece of this network. You could change it to, do something new if you wanted to. Like, it's just a really interesting world we're heading into. Also too, Laserhands said the governing council is rammed with Fortune 500 companies, some of which are the best and most profitable tech companies in the world. It's not like the ecosystem should be short of liquidity at all by any means. Things take time. I think that's another thing that's brought up, is when we talk about liquidity, it's like, well, my God, like liquidity. I mean, we've got Google, we've got IBM. And, I think, again, it's worth remembering that what we're talking about is people actually moving their money from their bank accounts into the Hedera ecosystem. That's really what we're talking about. And the multitudes of different paths and pitfalls and challenges that you have to go through and travel through to, get your money into the network. It's still not super easy. And I think the problem that a lot of people speak to when we talk about liquidity is the fact that there is a lot of liquidity that wants to get into the ecosystem. That's the other part of this too, is there's a lot of money that wants to get into the Hedera ecosystem that just, there are barriers, there are blockers, and those need to be removed. That's the whole other side to this. I get messages, I'm sure projects get messages about, hey, where can I buy HBAR? I can't get it on, Coinbase where I live, or there's no exchanges that have it where I live, or, I've got a bunch of this asset and I want to port it to Hedera. And so again, like, it's not just about raising awareness so people go, oh, this is great, I'm gonna move my money there. It's like, it's also about the fact that there are people already looking to dive in, and it's just difficult. So there are as well barriers to remove. Dom James also on this thread brings up a great point. We need a killer use case. If Hedera doesn't bust a move in 2024, we may have a big problem. The technology is superior, but honestly, that doesn't matter if not enough eyes are on it. And this goes back to something I thought was interesting from last week, which was Shane, the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, he talks about this cornerstone deal, which he describes as, a very large scale consumer facing use case that leverages Hedera, and incubating those types of things. And you can look at some existing ones we have being that. Karate Combat has a strong case to be made that it could be that cornerstone deal. We don't know, but I think that there's definitely merit to that. We do need something that is built inside of our ecosystem that brings value to millions of people, right? It's not just about bringing resources and ideas and teams and products from outside of Hedera into Hedera. It's also about groundbreaking things emanating from the ecosystem. And so that's a really powerful thing, is what if we had a really killer startup or application or project that touched the lives of so many different people in a crazy way that was consumer facing, right? That wasn't, international bank remittances or CBDs or supply chain carbon offsetting or this or that, that was something very direct for people that improve their lives at a large scale. It's that is, I think, a big focus for, the HBAR Foundation, Hedera's world. I mean, it's gotta be the focus of everybody in Web3, because we just haven't really, no one's really had that yet. I mean, there are platforms that, millions of people use, but even things like, the Starbucks NFTs or different things like that. It's not something that can penetrate the consciousness of the global or even just American consumer base. It's not something that's top of mind for regular people. So it's really interesting, very interesting stuff. Continuing on with some of the responses here. This is great to read these through. Definitely marketing. Dennis V says, outside of our community, I don't see HBAR being advertised. And I think that's also another interesting topic to bring up is, Hedera is just not going to advertise HBAR. They're not going to promote HBAR. It's well known that, Hedera as an organization, people at Hedera, are very restricted in the different types of things they can engage with and things that they can do. The Hedera account there's a lot of red tape. And again, I think that it's a very conservative approach. I think it's something that was very appealing for a lot of original investors, but it is what it is. Hedera, you're not going to see Hedera promoting HBAR. It's just not going to happen, at least in the short or medium term. But yeah, you're just not going to see that until there's some drastic change to regulations or something like that. The people who need to promote HBAR is, the foundation, and, the other associations and organizations that are tasked with ecosystem growth. But really the HBAR Foundation is kind of the tip of the spear for that kind of stuff. So they're the ones that are responsible for exchange listings. They're the ones that are tracking those different growth metrics and everything. So that's really important. It all ties back. And again, when we talk about awareness and different things like that, what's the best advertisement you can have as a crypto, right? The best advertisement you can have is an exchange listing, is being listed on an exchange. That's an advertisement. Space Ape says, I wonder if HBAR not being in the top 10 cryptocurrencies is the biggest factor. Perhaps the landscape will change in ways we can't predict. Over the next few years, that brings liquidity without being in the top 10 list. The good news is we are seeing user and developer growth. And that's another big thing. Lehman and Mance and so many people in the ecosystem, are have always said, Hedera is going to be a top 5 coin. We're still, where are we at in the ranks here? I haven't checked in way too long. So we're usually around number 30. Geez, we're at number 37 in market cap. So we've moved down considerably in the rankings. And I think that's kind of what we're all talking about. Is it can seem dumb, but websites like Coin Market Cap and different things like that is, the fact that you have to have this kind of exposure. It's very important to have that kind of exposure. Now, let's just continue on here with some last people. We need a really good game. Drover.hbar says, yeah, and we've got, Lethos, we've got Doctor Who, we've got some good gaming use cases, but yeah, we need something to go live at scale. And let's see here, continuing on. I got a bunch of new comments. I have to go through these, but I'm happy to take the time here to kind of read through some of these responses and dive into some of these points, because it's a really huge conversation happening these days in the Hedera ecosystem that I don't think happens enough, is liquidity. I think that that's just a very, very important thing to keep in mind. Now, moving on, another story today is the Messari crypto report. Now, again, quick reminder, Messari is, funded by the HBAR Foundation for these stories. And a quick mention, I know that right now, I think there's a big Hedera space is happening right now, so we don't want to go too much longer. Genfinity, good friends of the show, is doing a Twitter Spaces right now. That's very, very interesting. So we're not going to go too long here, but the Messari crypto report came out, and there's a few highlights here. So basically, what the report does is it goes through a bunch of different key metrics in the Hedera ecosystem. It's pretty holistic too. It goes through retail, it goes through enterprise, it goes through the governing council, it goes through so many different things. And a lot of these charts are very well done. This is a really great resource to send to somebody that, is seriously, looking at HBAR, or interested in HBAR from an investment perspective. This is a pretty good report. So Nick Garcia, who is at Messari Crypto, tweeted out a few different highlights from this specific Hedera report. So, transaction volume set an all-time high. Total value locked is set an all-time high. $400 million ecosystem fund was announced, right? We talked about that episode 109. And EVM tooling continued to improve. So Q4, the network's transaction volume saw an increase for the 6th consecutive quarter, achieving an all-time high of 164 million daily average transactions. That's crazy. 164 million transactions in one day. That's 66 growth quarter over quarter. And the consensus service remains the prominent source of this. Now, this was an interesting thing too. So we look at TVL, 169% growth year over year. Really, really interesting. By the end of Q4, the Hedera network ranked top 40 by TVL among blockchain networks. So again, to put that in perspective, Hedera had 0 TVL for a very long time. Now, that is no longer the story. Governing council is strong. Now, the market the market cap is growing. Circulating market cap increased 78% quarter over quarter to 2.9 billion. That's very interesting to see. Also, too, there's one question that was raised by this report, is revenue. I don't know, from what I'm seeing here, this is one thing that's really interesting to me, is what I'm seeing here is, does this include Atma.io consensus transactions? That's something I need to reconcile in my mind, because when I look at the revenue charts here, it follows the same pattern as the transaction charts on Metrica, right? If we go to the last 3 months, the last quarter, or let's just look at the last year. Right? Look at this chart here. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Right? Look at this chart here. And then look at the revenue chart on the report, right? It's pretty much the same. And to me, that's really like interesting, because is Avery Dennison revenue being counted as this, growth in revenue, which is really interesting. I'm on the fence. Like, I don't know if it should be, because again, all those transactions are subsidized by the foundation. So yeah, I got to do some more thought on it. I got to get to the bottom of it, but that's my big question right now is this revenue data, does it include revenue from Atma.io? That's going to be very interesting kind of to get to the bottom of, but good report. I love the Masari Crypto reports. It gives a good view. And again, like I said, it's just a good resource to kind of just send to people who are curious about Hedera from an investment perspective. Also too, the other thing is there was a Dovu community spaces recently. That was really interesting to see. They talked a bit about about kind of the vision of what they're going to be doing at Dovu. Dovu is a project that a lot of people in the Hedera community are very excited about, including myself. I've had Matt Smithies on the show many times. Lots of great conversations. They've published their roadmap. And they also have basically Dovu OS, which is this new approach to carbon offset stuff. We've talked about it on the show extensively. I'm not going to go in depth to it and kind of reiterate over it again. But what I will say, go listen to the Twitter Spaces that Dovu did this week. It was very, very good. It was with the CEO and the CTO of Dovu. They go over this stuff. They share some alpha. And it's not like a whole lot that we haven't talked about on the show before, but definitely go listen to it. Serial Finance. This is another story that has been, an interesting one to see kind of unfold. Because one thing that we've been crying out for in the Hedera community is lending and borrowing, right? That is something that is missing. That when we talk about liquidity, when we talk about giving people things to do in the community, lending and borrowing is something that's brought up many times. And so there's this company, and also too, I just want to touch on this real quick. So Headstarter, Hedera use case, I talk to Tudor at Headstarter, frequently, awesome startup on Hedera, great organization. They do a lot of different things, like, most people will be familiar with the, initial NFT offering they did for the Citadel wallet, all that good stuff. They have a program called Zero Gravity, and they're doing, grants for like, $25,000 or whatever. So this is really good stuff. This is like grassroots community growth. I love to see this. And one of the first grantees of the program is Serial Finance from Astrid, which is a blockchain development firm that's building out a lending protocol on Hedera. This is very, very interesting and very, very exciting. So a little bit about Serial. So Serial is a lending protocol built on the Hedera network that aims to provide an excellent user experience through Hedera's speed and scalability. It incorporates machine learning to help decrease liquidation events by predicting loan risks. So their website also outlines Serial's roadmap, including the launch of their DApp in this year, so very soon. And they're going to be releasing an initial machine learning model in the second quarter of this year, including a governance token and system in quarter 3. And updating the machine learning model in quarter 4. So a pretty high level roadmap. But what I find interesting is the kind of the AI component, the machine learning component of this. Because again, with borrowing and lending in Web3 and crypto, there's many risks. So, excuse me. So when I read, things regarding, decreasing liquidation events, being able to predict loan risks, different things like that, that's very fascinating stuff. And basically, when you look at their website, it seems pretty compelling, right? Here's their roadmap. And it's pretty straightforward stuff, but, they're teaming up with Hedera. They're teaming up with, Headstarter, Blade Wallet, Saucer Swap, Hashpack. So some of the usual suspects. And, I like the sounds of this. Now, is this the first time we've had borrowing and lending on Hedera? Kind of, no. I mean, we've had NFT lending and borrowing and different things like that. There's been a little bit of experimentation, some trial and error, but we haven't had like a true borrowing and lending platform as people in Web3 are familiar with it. So I think it's going to be a big step up. I'm going to be following this story. Maybe we'll have Serial Finance on the show, right? Maybe we'll see what's going on, but I dig it. Now I want to talk about another story, which is Quick Pick. So this was one that kind of grabbed my attention, that we've kind of been following a little bit, but this is kind of a new headline that wraps this up pretty nicely. So Quick Pick is a delivery platform that obviously leverages Hedera, that allows people to send packages within Africa. It uses Hedera's consensus service to immutably record delivery details and carbon emissions on Hedera. This provides transparency and protects drivers. Quick Pick also uses Hedera's token service and a stablecoin called KPL for payments. So right there, a new use case in developing economies, leveraging both the consensus service and the token service. We're starting to see more of these use cases. I remember I was in LA chatting with Mance Harmon, the co-founder of Hedera, and one of the things that he kind of brings up is like the Hedera consensus service is the gateway drug to Web3, right? Because the consensus service is really cheap and it plugs into existing business workflows. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So once you try it out, organizations and enterprises kind of go, hey, this is great. There's more stuff on here. So you look at a use case like this and you go, okay, cool. They're using multiple services on Hedera. The platform, QuickPick, aims to promote financial inclusion in Africa by creating jobs, expanding access to markets for local businesses, and encouraging the use of digital payment methods. Already, QuickPick has carried out 4,500 deliveries, has 650 app downloads, 110 motorbikes under QuickPick management, and 25 paying business-to-business customers in Nigeria, Ghana, and beyond. So again, similar to the, we were joking about the Saucer Swap growth of, 69% of 11,000 users, right? I saw some responses to this story. People going, 650 app downloads. That's nothing. That's tiny. Again, we were going from 0 to 650. That's something. You have to start somewhere. And when we talk about these types of use cases, a lot of times people go, well, okay, is it actually using Hedera? Where can I look this up? Where can I see this happening on the Hedera mainnet? And one thing that was great about this article in the HBAR Foundation blog was they actually included at the bottom all of the wallet addresses, right, that are being used for this use case. So this is really exciting. And I don't know if this has happened like this before. Like the community will go and hunt down topic IDs and wallets and different stuff like that to do some detective work on these various use cases. But this is one of the first times, or one of the few times, that I've seen a use case go, yeah, here's the topic ID or wallet for carbon emissions. Here's it for dispatch transactions, financial transactions, the KPL stablecoin, like really great. So if we look at this, right, here are the carbon emission tracking for the QuickPick use case right on the Hedera mainnet, right? They're happening right here. If we go into one of them, we can look at the metadata in the transaction to HCS for this use case, right? So We've got the request ID. That's some little bit of data. Distance, right? So that miles or kilometers. The vehicle type, motorcycle. The date and time. And the carbon emission. Seems pretty straightforward. That's, and again, live right here on the Hedera mainnet. So that's very interesting. Also too, let's go back again. Let's look at the dispatch transactions, right? Again, right here on the mainnet for this use case, you can literally just look up these transactions on the mainnet. Here's someone ordering something, right? So that's very cool. And then also we've got the stablecoin the stablecoin here. So here's the stablecoin that's used for transactions, which is very, very cool. And again, this use case is live on the Hedera mainnet, although it's small, it's tiny but mighty. And so, yeah, this article on the Hedera blog concludes noting that QuickPick is beginning to scale beyond Nigeria, and its activities are generating transactions on the Hedera mainnet related to deliveries, payments, and carbon tracking. So this is really interesting. And the most interesting aspect of this use case is something we've been seeing more and more that I think, the Hedera community gets a little stoked about, which is this team was originally planning to build on Polygon. And they decided to move production to Hedera, citing the best-in-class sustainability credentials and capabilities for supply chain and logistics use cases at scale. So again, we're starting to see enterprise or startup use cases migrate from other networks to Hedera. That's something we've been wanting to see. And it's happening. It's really, really exciting to see. We've got a couple more stories here. Before we kind of start to wind things down. Just another, quick shout out to everybody. Really appreciate folks supporting the show. Again, I'll just throw it up here again. Really easy to support the show. HBAR tip. I can buy more equipment for the show. I can get some more stuff rocking. It's what it's all about. It's great to see the show averaging, a couple hundred listeners, 500 listeners on Spaces every week. It was funny too, because early on the show was only live, right? It's so cool to have these recordings and now go to video, and do all these things. So very, very exciting stuff. Another story here that's kind of breaking right at this moment that's really exciting to see is, regarding, HCS 20, which is something we talked about extensively this year on the show so far. And also something that is having a big transformative moment currently, going through what's called a jubilee. So for folks unfamiliar with HCS 20, this is the use case that will that'll allow Bitcoin ordinals or ordinals on any other network to start leveraging Hedera right away. This is also a standard that could be used by your local grocery store for their points or whatever. It's about points. It's not about tokens. It's about allowing projects and companies to create point systems that offer similar qualities to tokens, but not the regulatory concerns, right? You can't necessarily make liquidity pools for these things. It's just a different way of operating. And to really, for anyone not familiar with this or not really understanding kind of what the point of it is, what this is about is, to me, it feels a lot like the EVM equivalence conversation, right? The EVM equivalent stuff is about, hey, we've got Hedera, we got this network, it's awesome. We got all of these other developers out there on other networks that use Solidity, that use smart contracts, that use the EVM. Let's make it as easy as possible for those people to pack up and go and come to Hedera and not have to change their products or services or companies, and just have it work out of the box. That's the goal. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of conversation around EVM equivalents of saying, well, why water down the Hedera network and use smart contracts when the consensus service and token service are so much better? What's the point? And so the argument's made, well, it makes it easier for people to move over. So, there's that. HCS20, on the other hand, although it's the same kind of thinking in my brain as I go, well, okay, there's this standard out on all sorts of other networks like Binance or Bitcoin or whatever you might call it, that just sprouted up out of nowhere, that was ordinals, that was this little standard. Well, let's look at Hedera and go, well, we've got this Hedera consensus service that is literally exactly what these other networks are trying to build, that they can't build, that the networks can't quite facilitate. What if we just added a simple standard to Hedera to utilize the consensus service? And it's that same thing. It's allowing people on other networks that are leveraging ordinals to just pick up and come to Hedera. And it's no joke. We're talking about, we're talking about millions, billions of dollars of activity that can now easily just hop and skip over to Hedera. And it's very exciting. It's very cool stuff. And it feels like the EVM thing, but just a little different. It's multiple pathways opening up. And so what this Jubilee is about is it's basically just a big upgrade to the standard based on feedback from the community. A lot of feedback is about like, well, how can we exchange these tokens, or how can we stake these, or sorry, not tokens. How can we exchange these points or stake these points, or how can we leverage them for DAOs, right? Decentralized autonomous organizations, all these different types of things. People want HCS to do more. So people following along, if you're excited about HCS 20, pay attention right now. There's big stuff happening with the standard. That's what a Jubilee is. It's basically a massive, huge upgrade. And it's going to be very fascinating to see what's going on. Now, another thing that I want to quickly bring up and just touch on that's exciting is Hashpack has been doing some upgrades to their wallet. They've got some really cool things added. One of those things, most notably, is an NFT Launchpad aggregator. So I want to give a shout out to Hashpack. This is really cool because we've seen a lot of different platforms start to try to bring things together a little bit. There's NFT drops, there's token drops, there's all these different types of things happening all over the place. Some people have a hard time keeping track of when they're happening or what exactly they're about or how to get into it. A lot of people use Hashpack. So it's awesome to see wallets starting to build in these user experiences, close the gap between a user and being able to interact with a project. So with this case, with Hashpack, they've got a new NFT Launchpad aggregator, which basically means you can go into Hashpack and search a project or collection and be able to see, what mints are coming up and what does the mint look like, right? How much supply is it? How much is it? And actually just be able to go and click a button and participate in it. So when we talk about bringing in liquidity into the ecosystem, when we talk about giving people things to do, this is what I'm talking about. This is giving people great things to do. And also too, we see other wallets doing this like Kabila and Blade. And we also see platforms like NFT platforms and analytics platforms and all sorts of different things. They're all starting to integrate with each other and interoperate with each other. That's what I'm really excited to see, right? No longer do we have these kind of siloed experiences and applications. This is directly related to the conversations around WalletConnect, right? We're starting to see interoperability happen within our ecosystem on new levels, which is awesome to see. I want to share a quick clip with people. This was something important that I wanted to touch on and highlight. And it's involving the recent, there was like, what was it? 4.8, almost 5 billion HBAR of funding from the Hedera treasury that is being dispersed to the governing council, a small portion, and then, I say small portion. What I mean is 600 million HBAR But then the lion's share of that disbursement is going to the foundation and all sorts of different projects and everything. And I think that kind of news, we talked about it extensively in previous episodes, so go listen to that at hashgraph.news. But the aftermath of that and the aftermath of those discussions is just kind of confusion. It's like, well, how does that work? What does that actually look like? Like, how does that HBAR move? And there was a great explanation that Rob Allen, again, from the Governing Council, that he broke down for everybody on the HBAR Bulls show about what's actually going to happen and how does it all work. And so I wanted to just play that for everybody. It's just a little clip here from the HBAR Bulls show that I just think Rob Allen does a great job of just, summarizing what it's all about and how it all works. So let's listen in here.
So the allocation out of Treasury is voted on by the Governing Council.
By ESG, that market, that climate finance market.
I have these shortcuts for the cutting the camera angles. And so I think that YouTube thought I was trying to move to a different time in the video. I was not YouTube. All I'm trying to do is change my camera angle. We're learning all the time. So what I want to do is just find the part of the video here. Okay, here we go.
The LLC, which is the Governing Council, allocates funding to Swirls Labs, to the foundation, to the
very professional production here, guys.
Now to the DLC Science Foundation, and potentially other organizations as well as we further decentralize. So the allocation out of Treasury is voted on by the Governing Council. And this happened in Singapore. Actually, it happened subsequent to Singapore because there was quite a lot of discussion and debate about it, and a lot of work goes into doing these things. The process is that each of the foundations, the organizations, prepare a case for further grant funding to do a particular job. And that allocation, once agreed by the council, gets transferred out of the Treasury account into accounts for each of those allocated, ring-fenced, if you like, for each of those foundations. This is what has happened with this most recent tranche. It was always going to happen, and now it's the vote has been taken to do that. What then happens is that that funding isn't given to each of the organizations. What then happens is, because the Governing Council
than Spotify and Apple
by ESG, that market, that climate finance
I hit the button again.
was predicted to go from
team, but then when the Governing Council
we'll get back to it.
Further grant funding.
Here we go. We'll get back to it. I have to figure that out.
Discussion and debate about it, and a lot of work goes into doing these things. The process is that each of the foundations, the organizations, prepare a case for further grant funding to do a particular job. And that allocation, once agreed by the council, gets transferred out of the Treasury account into accounts for each of those allocated, ring-fenced, if you like, for each of those foundations. This is what has happened with this most recent tranche. It was always going to happen, and now it's the vote has been taken to do that. What then happens is that that funding isn't given to each of the organizations. What then?
Also, real quick, it's going to be. This is another reason why it's going to be really interesting to see the Governing Council meeting minutes from Singapore, and subsequently leading up to this disbursement, right? November and December, like what are the conversations? What are the votes regarding these disbursements? That's going to be really interesting to see.
What then happens is, because the Governing Council is, very broad, and we meet only once a month, and there are different time zones involved, a lot of the actual day-to-day work of the Governing Council is delegated to the board. And the board are a number of directors who have been appointed, voted for and appointed to the board to do a lot more of the heavy lifting on behalf of the Governing Council. The board have a finance committee, which is day-to-day responsible with the management team, the executives and management team within Hedera, to release that funding against contractual arrangements or agreements that are made with the foundations. So even though it's arm's length, even though that there's no control whatsoever between the two bodies, there is an agreement for foundation, for example, to do a job, and then the funding is released on the basis of that agreement. So it is true to say that 4+ billion HBAR have been allocated to the foundations. That's the vote that's just been taken and the allocation that's been made. The HBAR themselves are not released into circulating supply. That will happen over the course of the next 2-3 years, however long it takes to distribute those HBAR. And they are specifically allocated for ecosystem development. So the foundation, as we know, provides grant funding to develop the ecosystem, to build the HBAR economy, to provide grant funding to projects. THA, the Hashgraph Association, runs the Hashgraph Innovation Program. It's announced that it's building a ventures studio. It runs the enterprise program. So all of these are project support in a different way to foundation project support. The DOT Science Foundation has its own remit, does its own thing, and it receives the HBAR allocation and subsequent release for doing what it is doing on behalf of the entire ecosystem. So, it sounded like a big chunk of treasury, but if you think about it, it's doing a lot of work, right?
That's really the key takeaway for me, which is this is not Hedera, minting a bunch of HBAR or releasing a bunch of HBAR or selling a bunch of HBAR. Like literally all this is it's kind of just like budgeting. They've always had this HBAR and they go, well, we've decided what we're going to do with some of this HBAR and here's what we're going to do with it. And the reality is it's going to enter the marketplace over the coming years. And I think it's a positive thing. I think these types of things can definitely, when we talk about awareness and we talk about retail and we talk about these types of things, this type of stuff does bring attention to builders and companies and degens and stuff of there's money available to bring ideas to life and make things happen. So it's up to these organizations to be responsible for how that HBAR is distributed, but it's there and it's good to have there, especially as we're entering, again, a possible bull market. We want growth. We want support. I also want to share a quick clip from Max Walker Williams interview that was posted this morning about Davos 2024. I think this will be the last time we talk about Davos, but just wanted to bring it up because it was a great clip. But there was one piece in here that was just kind of cool from Claudio at Swirlds Labs. Claudio is kind of like the branding designer, marketing guy at Hedera that works very closely with the Swirlds Labs team. And he basically shared an insight being at Davos and the types of people you're surrounded with and experiences that you have that just kind of jumped out to me a little bit and it was kind of cool. So we'll just play that really quick here and check it out.
Your video went live with him as well, and he talked about how busy he was.
This is pretty cool.
Having him there this year was really, really great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Max, I was just going to say that whole journey getting to our space too, security one day was an hour long. The next day it would be only 15 minutes long. But the amount of business cards and the caliber and quality of people that we would meet in line. One time they held me back and the president of Argentina walked right by me and I had a quick hello with him. You had an opportunity to meet some pretty influential people and some game-changing people. Bill McDermott, Jamie Dimon, a number of people that were coming in and out of that hotel was awesome. And then one night I remember sitting in the bar and we were I was speaking to a person who was a professor of blockchain at UC Berkeley. And I said, hey, are you free right now? Would you like to join us for our dinner and our panel discussion? And he's like, oh my gosh, I would love to. and I walked him right over and I got him a seat at the same table with Lehman, and now him and Lehman are buddies and they hit it off. And so just some really great opportunities, which last year we just didn't have.
Yeah. And it speaks to, I think that was really interesting to see kind of, that interview, just because they basically touched on the fact, I think the big theme of last year at Davos versus this year at Davos was with the Hedera house where they were on the promenade was very difficult to get important people and leaders and CEOs to kind of come into the exhibit they had, that space, as cool as it was. Now, this year they were kind of in the heart of the action at the Belvedere Hotel and lots of people flowing through, and it was just a different dynamic. They went to where those people are, that I think they had a lot more success this year at Davos than they did last year. And that was just kind of cool hearing that clip. I was like, oh, a new friend for Lehman. I'm going to sip my bevy here. We're going to start winding it down here a bit, guys. I'll talk about two last stories. One of them is regarding Lethos. We talked about gaming, right? The need for good games in the ecosystem, all these different types of things. A lot of people look at Lethos, this, Web3 native AAA gaming studio on Hedera that a lot of people are excited about, of course. And there was a great tweet that came out. Because I think a lot of people are waiting to see what Lethos is going to do. A lot of people are waiting with bated breath. And so there was a very cool tweet that was shared from arc.eth. They say, quote, "I'm currently overseeing 2 console quality games as studio design director at Lethos. I've never been more busy, but also never been more excited in my entire career. Both teams on both games are outstanding. Can't wait to be able to share more." So it's clear that some big gaming stuff is happening on Hedera. And I'm just noticing a little bit of a theme of some of these use cases like Lethos, like Neuron, like Bank Social, all these different types of things, being more vocal on X and social media, a little more candid. It's just interesting to see that, holding things a little less close to the chest. It's exciting. I love to see it. And the last thing I just wanted to touch on today, a tweet that was sent out by legend and creator in the ecosystem, Vicente, shout out. Big news story in the music industry was UMG, the world's biggest music company. And I don't say that lightly. This is the world's biggest music company, Universal Music Group. They say they will remove their artist music from TikTok this Wednesday when their contract expires after failing to reach a new agreement with the platform. They have failed to reach an agreement on fair compensation and AI protections. It looks like that is happening today. As people know, TikTok depends on music. That's a big part of the culture there, and it's a big part of the content, and UMG pulling the plug on that is not good for the platform. So Hedera creator Vicente says, quote, "Music industry giving TikTok lessons on fair deals. The irony is real. Artists, remember, if you are not building your own platform, you're at someone else's mercy. Own your community. Control your destiny. Simple." So shout out to Vicente. And yeah, as a musician myself, I've been in that, system. I got a publisher and different things like that. And it's crazy. I don't get paid royalties till 9 months out and everything. We've talked about how, amazing the intersection of DLT or Hedera and music is. It's always something I've been very excited about. So that's just one thing to keep, it's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see. It's, again, the largest music company in the world is pulling the plug from TikTok. There are shakeups happening in big ways for artists, and Web3 is at the center of it. And I'm going to be very excited to see, kind of how that unfolds, and what could be happening, So What a week. Jeepers. We had a lot of stuff happen this week. I mean, we talked about, a new governing council member joining that nobody kind of saw, kind of slipped under the radar a bit. We talked about the big story today was like the need for liquidity in the ecosystem and all of the different opinions from community members on that topic. It was really great to see all that. I think I might just clip out that part of the show and post that as like a long video, just reading through those responses, because it was really great to see. Quick pick delivery use case live on the mainnet, HCS, HTS, very, very fascinating stuff. WalletConnect going live. The Ripple co-founder hacked. Saucer Swap is growing. Neuron's putting out a token. HCS Jubilee. I mean, like I said at the top of the show, lots of people would say, it's a little bit of a slow news weekend at Hedera. I beg to differ. Folks. If you look at what's happening beyond governing council member additions, beyond enterprise use cases, beyond all that stuff, this community is growing in a very, very big way. And the next step is about liquidity, right? And that's why I called the show Insert Coins to Continue, because that's kind of where we're at. We will, without those new pathways and gateways being established, right? Without allowing these people on the sidelines to really jump into Hedera and removing those barriers, without growing awareness and getting new trading pairs and tokens and stuff on exchanges, without giving people more things to do with their HBAR in the Hedera ecosystem and having new DeFi things like lending and borrowing and retail oracles. Without those things, this ecosystem will hit a ceiling. We don't want this network to just be something enterprise uses. And it's not going to work well for enterprises if they're the only ones using it, right? Like we talked about, Hedera is best for enterprises, but it's not only for enterprises. And that's the reality. We will hit a ceiling at some point without these new things happening. And I think that what gets me excited is knowing that the community is so strong, and knowing that these types of conversations are happening all over the place, like not just on this show, but like all over the place, every day, all the time. And I know that there's arguing and bickering and there's FUD and this and that. That'll pass. I really think what's important right now is really just staying focused, right? Keeping our eye on the prize, and understanding that we have to insert coins to continue. And just another big shout out to, another big shout out to supporters of the show, tipping the show. This is how I make the show better. This is how we grow the show. This is what it's all about. And I think that, there's a bright future for this show. I'm so excited for some of the stuff coming. I can't go into details about it too much, but I mean, video is going to be a big theme of the show going forward. And I think that, I've heard rumors that Twitter Spaces is going to be adding a video component as well. So there's just so much change happening in so many different ways. 2024, bottom line is 2024 is going to be a crazy year. And I think it's going to be a crazy year in a good way. So as usual, anybody listening live now on Twitter Spaces, if you see someone listening you want to connect with, please reach out, connect with them. You can just click on their profile picture and send a message. Genfinity is doing a big Twitter Spaces right now while this one's happening. So I encourage people to go head over there and check that out. Always good stuff. And with that, as usual, hello future, goodbye past.
Thanks for listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show, hosted by Brandon Davenport.
Listen to past episodes and support the show at itsbrandond.com/HBAR.
Oh yeah, I've got to change that. The URL is wrong. You can go to itsbrandond.com/HBAR, but you can also go to hashgraph.news, which sounds cooler. So another thing to do. Another day, another thing to do. Take care, everybody.